everyone, I'm Eve. Let me start by asking you guys a question. How would you describe yourself? Maybe you said you're an introvert or an extrovert, a science person or a humanities person. Maybe you've taken the MBTI test and found out you're an INFP or an ESTJ. It seems like we love putting labels on ourselves, how we think, how we act, what we like or dislike. Maybe it's because these labels, they give us a sense of belonging. They help us find our people, feel understood, and steer clear of things that don't quite fit us. It's like saying, I'm this kind of person, so I belong here. Well, sometimes, labels also tell us where we don't belong. As for me, I've always been on the emotional side. I love art and poetry, and thinking about some open questions that are kind of impossible to answer. As a kid, I dreamed of becoming a comic artist or an author. And I like that. I like who I was. I even thought I already knew how my life was going. But then, there's physics. Yeah, that physics. The one from the textbooks and Einstein and equation, black and white photos, and some really serious-looking people, the ones we call physicists. For a long time, physics felt distant to me, not in a mysterious way, but in a you're not invited in kind of way. It's built on rigid formulas, laws, and rules, and it's not exactly solved at all, right? So physics and I, we were parallel, just running side by side and never meant to meet. But parallel things don't always stay that way. With the right shift, they intersect. In math, there's a concept called the cross product, where two vectors meet at an angle and created a brand new one. That's what happened to me in physics. We came across, and we crossed. I still remember so clearly. I was sitting in a cram school class, listening to a lesson on the photoelectric effect. The teacher used a surprisingly vivid analogy to explain this phenomenon. And that was the first time I felt like physics isn't just something I try to memorize. Instead, it felt more like a real encounter. The teacher said, it's like Santa Claus tossing out bags of money to kids. Photons give energy packs to electrons, and electrons, they'll have to pay a certain amount of money to leave their school. Whatever is left is what they can spend outside, which is their kinetic energy. I was totally amazed. This wasn't the physics I used to know. This was so playful, visual, and full of creativity. And suddenly, I found myself sitting straighter, leaning in, and paying attention like I'd never before. And somewhere in the back of my mind, there's a teeny tiny voice whispered, hey, this might actually be fun. But along with that excitement came with a strange fear. A new world was opening up for me, but I wasn't sure if I belonged. Well, to be honest, I didn't think I had the right to explore this territory, because in my mind, the people who are good at physics were mostly guys. They were naturally logical and brilliant since their birth. So I was kind of afraid I wouldn't be able to keep up. Well, even more than that, I was afraid. If I let physics in, then I might lose the emotional side of me and become one of those stereotypical nerds with all calculations and no feelings. Well, despite all that anxiety, I still decided to push open that door and give it a try. I started doing things that are totally out of my character. I stopped doodling faces of scientists in my notebooks and instead stayed after class to ask questions. And as I kept learning, from classical mechanics to relativity, something unexpected happened. I started seeing the beauty in the patterns, just like the way I do when I look at a piece of art. It's a beauty that comes from symmetry, from seeing something incredibly complex become simple, from realizing that a messy problem actually hides a unified law beneath it. The feeling of everything snapping into place reminded me of a sketch that finally comes together when I find the perfect curves and lines. Physics, gave me the same satisfaction that art does, both reaching for the meaning and connection we shared with the universe. It taught me how to structure abstract ideas, how to hold big, well-rolling thoughts, and anchor them in something real. And for the most beautiful part is that I didn't lose myself in the process. Instead, I found a completely new version of me I didn't know existed. Someone who can feel deeply and think logically. Someone who doesn't have to choose between art or science, because I could be both. Well, in fact, the product we created has led me to a completely new places. I somehow got into the math and science gifted class. Well, pretty ironic, because I never thought myself as gifted. But just like that, I spent my high school years in a STEM-focused environment. I founded our school's first physics club, where we got to run all kinds of fun experiments and theories together. I even worked on a research project about wave-particle duality of electrons at the National Synchrotron Radiation Research Center. I mean, whoa, even the names are way too advanced for someone who wants to drawing comics, right? Anyway, and now I'm planning to major in physics. Something I never thought I'd say, but here we are. I pick up so many new labels along the way: a physics student, a researcher, a club leader, blah, blah, blah. But this time, I know that these labels, they don't define what else I can explore. Because looking back, if I hadn't given physics a chance when we first met, I might lose all these possibilities and new roles. And maybe you have some moments like that too. Moments when activity and subject, a lesson or an idea caught your attention, but you somehow push it away, telling yourself, no, I'm not that type of person. That's just not for me. I wouldn't fit in there. But what if it could be? What if the part of yourselves feel like opposite are actually meant to meet, to collide, and to create something new? You don't have to give up who you are. You just have to be curious enough to ask, what might happen if I say yes? Well, fun fact, I'm not the only person who took a turn like this. Louis de Broglie, the physicist who proposed particles act like waves. He didn't start in physics. He was studying history. But an encounter with science created a cross-product that changed him and the future of physics. That third vector, it shaped the foundation of quantum theory and even earned him the Nobel Prize. And that's the thing about Common Cross. It might not fit your labels, and it might even scare you. But somehow, that's exactly what makes it worth it. So, stay curious, stay open. Don't walk away too fast. Because the moment you say yes to something new, that's when the third vector forms. And maybe, just maybe, the new direction will take you to somewhere extraordinary. Thank you.